compared to other extractions like alcohol extraction, for instance, where you have to, once you do an alcohol extraction, you mix your material with alcohol and then you leach out the oil or dissolve out the oil. You have to get the oil separate from the alcohol, so you have to distill it. And that's where you expose the material to a lot of heat. CO2 doesn't have that problem because it wants to be a gas at room temperature, room pressure. So you perform the extraction, you decompress it, you separate the oil, and then what you're left with is basically, the instant you take it out of the machine, it's carbonated. It's literally bubbling, just like beer. But you leave it sit there for 5 or 10 minutes, and it goes flat, just like beer does.
So with your machines, because of the stainless steel, they're certified then to be able to do like food and pharmaceutical grade extractions?
So they're not qualified for pharmaceutical grade at this point, but they are qualified for food grade. We also have received what's called a peer review certification from both the state of Colorado and the state of Washington. Those are the only two that currently require what's called engineering peer review. Yeah, they're sitting on the table over there. Colorado and Washington are currently the only states that require an engineering peer review in order to certify the equipment to get accepted. We're the first CO2 manufacturer to have an engineering peer review completed for both of those states. Is your question?
It was kind of on the same lines. Are your CO2 extraction only available for botanicals or for foods like olive oils or coconut oils?
Oh yeah. Any botanical oils or olives or anything like that. CO2 is actually kind of neat if you get into some techno geek kind of stuff here. CO2 is a cleaner, right? And so there's a lot of people who use CO2 for a cleaning process. For instance, it's a natural disinfectant, and NASA cleans all of the stuff that they can fit into a vessel with CO2 prior to sending it into outer space, so that we don't send a bunch of bugs and germs and things like that into outer space. So that's kind of one cleaning aspect. CO2 replaces the nasty solvents that you use in the dry cleaning process, and so it's very delicate. A lot of people will put very delicate laces and things like that in CO2 equipment to clean it, as opposed to the sodium perchloramate or whatever the stuff that they use in the dry cleaning process. One other unique application is what's called MIM. So the little dealie in your phone that detects it when you does this. It's called a MIMS, micro electrical mechanical system or device or something. I don't know what it's called. But it's basically a set of gears like this. They're microscopic and they're grown on a silicon wafer. And when you do that, if you do it in alcohol, the surface tension that comes from the alcohol when you evaporate it is too high and it crushes the little mechanism. Surface tension from supercritical CO2 is very gentle. All right? And so what we do is we take the silicon wafer with a MIM dealie on it, decompress the CO2 at a supercritical point. No surface tension, doesn't crush it, and that's how they make the little dealie that's in your phone. So, little science lesson for everybody. Sorry.
Does it work for maple syrup?
I have no idea. I don't know. I didn't think it would work, but Craig did some oranges at their place. So it's a fruit stuff. It smells.
It's water.
Yeah.
It smells fantastic. Yields are terrible, but it smells fantastic.
He's done 1,000,000 tons of hops.
Yeah, that's right. We got a gazillion things of hops. If anybody wants some hops, take a slow saver. Yeah, that's right. We found out that we're the biggest purchaser of hops. We don't do anything with beer. We're the largest purchaser of hops in the state of Ohio. We use hops for testing primarily.
Very similar to cannabis.
Just in the nutraceutical realm, I know that making sure, in raw food diets and things like that, when not preparing foods past a certain temperature, how hot does the machine get? Or is it able to preserve a lot of those oils then?
That's one of the unique things about CO2 in general, that it generally processes cold. But one of the unique things about our piece of equipment that differentiates us from the competition is the fact that we can run cold. Right? So most equipment, when you decompress CO2, it creates dry ice. Right? That's how you make dry ice. You take liquid CO2, you decompress it, and you compact it into a chunk. Well, dry ice is the enemy of this thing because the dry ice that's coming out during decompression has the oil encapsulated in it. We don't like dry ice. We don't want dry ice there. That being said, so a lot of people, what they'll do is to offset the dry ice that comes from the decompression of the CO2 is they'll put a bunch of heat into it. So they'll heat up the separator real high to make sure that it doesn't basically have dry ice. Well, when you do that, you're also exposing your oil to a high temperature. We've designed our system so that the separator can run cold, the extraction can be cold. That allows us to create a very aromatic, very fragrant extraction when we're doing essential oils. We can have selectivity. One of the things you'll see on the table over there is different extractions, or different what we call fractional extractions of hops oil. So So we can pull just the really light oils that are very fragrant, very aromatic. We pull the medium oils, which have more waxes. Or we can do a complete extraction where we pull basically everything that's available in it out. Right? And there's different applications for the different extractions. That's one of the unique things about CO2 and our equipment in general.
Is that why it takes 24 hours
So the drawbacks
to not get it hot?
everything we've been talking about is fantastic
Yeah.
with CO2. One of the drawbacks of CO2 is just not as powerful of a solvent as things like hexane, for instance. Hexane is used in a lot of commercial food manufacturing processes. It's dangerous, it's toxic, it's nasty, but it's used all the time because it's so powerful. CO2 is not as strong of a solvent, so the processing times tend to be longer.
Gotcha.
In general, the colder and the lower pressure, the longer it takes as well.
Mhm.
So you can make it go faster, but jeopardize product quality sometimes.
Gotcha.
Well, you don't have the post-processing
That's exactly
decontamination
right.
to get the hydrocarbons out of the material when you're done, so
That's
you
right.
save a little bit of time.
And safety.
Do you see yourself going toward the pharmaceutical grade, or are you just gonna stay with the?
When the demand gets there, I see our company going bigger. Whoever was asking before about the smaller units, I see us going bigger in general. Again, the cannabis industry is going to be the next 2-3 years, but beyond that, it's going to be more food products, natural products, things like that. Whether they'll require pharmaceutical grade versus just food grade, there's a difference between the manufacturing process and all those kind of things. I don't know. Pharmaceutical grade is very expensive in general, from the cleanliness, from the construction, from the components. It's just an expensive way to do it. Probably won't do it unless there's a demand.
Where do you see your markets when you begin the process? Where do you see your biggest markets in terms of like what farmers would grow locally
Yeah.
to supply you?
Yeah. So we've the lavender that you see in the little sample thing there actually came from the folks over on Central College at Jorgensen's farm. That's kind of where I see us is taking more locally grown plants and things like that, and create. I foresee us. I foresee my wife. She's in there. I foresee my wife developing a brand of extractable oil lines. Naturally, there's very few out there that are available from CO2 extraction standpoint. A lot of them are done with alcohols and things like that. That's really where I see us going from that front.
Yeah, but in terms of plants and types of intake that you expect to look for from farmers, any particular lavender? would be
Yeah,
one
it's
example.
not going to be soybeans. It's not going to be corn.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anything like that. It's going to be more specialty boutique kind of stuff. The equipment's expensive. The processing times are long.
Yeah.
It's going to be more high end, high quality. Kind of low volume, high price point products. Rose, for instance, any kind of flower that you use in perfume.
Mhm.
It takes just a boatload of flowers in order to be able to do it, and your yields aren't very high. So that's really where I see
Mhm.
us spend most of our time.
How many staff do you have right now? Are they here? Can they introduce themselves?
Sure.
It's hard to distinguish which ones work and which ones are just.
Which ones are going along for the ride? Go ahead.
I'm Sam, project engineer. Been working about 3 months now.
I'm Donnie Didion. I build the 1 liter systems here.
Donnie's also our ASME expert. So ASME is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. It's where we do all the design calculations for pressure vessels.
I'm Jeremy Sexton, like Andy said. I do the mostly the electrical work. I write the programs, build the control panels, and I'm also a little bit of a techno nerd. So
Yeah.
that's my kind of stuff.
Jeremy doesn't like to share it, or doesn't like when I share it either. But he's also a volunteer sheriff for an unnamed county here in the state of Ohio.
I'm Craig Henderson, service engineer, and do all the on-site training nationwide out of Denver.
I'm Sean Liberini, Director of Sales.
And there he is.
Bill Scott. Come on, what? Come on. I was outside. What?
I was outside.
I'm Scott Joseph. I build the unit. What's my title?
Hold on, wait. There's more. Brandon.
I'm Brandon Huff. I help with the welding.
I'm Kyle Minton. I'm an apprentice at CTEC of Lincoln County to Jeremy.
And Kyle's our second CTEC student. This young man is, well, Brandon graduated several years ago. Wyatt just graduated last year. He's been with us going on a year now.
Yep, I'm a welder. I do most of the welding on the separators, such as the half couplings and brackets, and mainly tack frames too. Just do about.
Licking County's JBS C-Tech does a fantastic job. I'm Steve Joseph. I'm Andy's dad. I've been working for him for 12 years now. A couple years, I've been retired a long time, but a couple years ago he said, "You got to help me." I'm a retired machinist, so that's what I do. I machine a lot of these